Hello students and welcome to the next session of company law. In the last two sessions we have discussed about the provisions relating to the general meetings, the types of the general meetings, how the general meeting should be conducted, so before general meetings, during general meeting and post general meeting compliances. Today we are going to start with a very important topic called as dividend. So what do you understand by this word dividend? So let me just put first. If we will study the definition which is given under the Companies Act, then we will find that the definition which is given under the Companies Act under section 2 subsection 35, we states that dividend includes interim dividend. Dividend includes interim dividend. Okay, so what does it mean by dividend, which includes interim dividend? But we need to understand the meaning of the dividend. This particular definition only enlarges the scope of the term dividend by including in it the interim dividend. But what is actually the dividend? What all about? A dividend is basically a part of the distributable profits whose payment is made by a company to its shareholders. So when shareholder invest money into the company, the equity shareholders or the preference shareholder, he is interested in getting return on investment, and that is in the form of the dividend. So in simple words, we can say that it is usually a distribution of profits, that is a portion of the profit and allocated or earned as payable to the shareholders whenever it is declared. So it may be declared in two different forms. Either it can be the fixed amount, or it can be the fixed percentage of the face value. Again, there can be two different types of dividend. The important types of dividends are interim dividend and final dividend. Okay, so we need to understand the provisions relating to it, interim dividend and final dividend. So provisions for the dividends are given from section 123 onwards. So we are going to discuss about these provisions. So let's get started. First we'll talk about the interim dividend. What does it mean? So let me just put over here interim dividend. Okay, so in short, the dividend which is declared between two AGMs is called as interim dividend, and this dividend can be declared by the board of directors, whereas the final dividend can be declared by the shareholders during annual general meeting. So let's first try to understand the provisions relating to the interim dividend, which are given under section 123, 3 and 4, subsection 3 and 4. So what does it mean by interim dividend? So there can be few pointers we can make over here. It is declared by board of directors. It can be declared during any financial year. So from where the declaration, you can say the declaration of interim dividend is done out of profits before final accounts. So you can say before passing final accounts or before final accounts, you can say. So sources, which sources of interim dividend can be? First, surplus in profit and loss account, surplus in profit and loss account. Profits during that financial year so that can be the sources. Interim dividend can be regularized at the ensuing, or you can say upcoming, AGM by the members. The interim dividend shall be deposited in separate account within 5 days from declaration. So these are some of the important points of the interim dividend. So one needs to understand that interim dividend can be declared by the board of directors. So for that you do not require the approval of the shareholders. Board of directors can take the decision if during the two AGMs, okay, if the profit is there with the company in the accounts of the company, the board of director can take the decision to distribute the profits in the form of interim dividend. It can be declared during any financial year. So during any financial year, it means during the financial year between two AGMs. So AGM has already been completed, and before the ensuing AGM will come, during that financial year, company's board of directors can take the decision to declare the interim dividend and to distribute that part of profit with the shareholders. The declaration of interim dividend is done out of the profits before final accounts. So before finalization of the accounts of the financial year, the interim dividend can be declared with the profits before finalization of the final accounts. What are the important sources of interim dividend? So there has to be surplus in the profit and loss account or profits during the financial year. So if the surplus is available, also interim dividend can be declared. Interim dividend can be regularized at the ensuing AGM by the members. See, when the company declares the final dividend, so that becomes the ordinary business for the company, and the whatever dividends, interim dividends, okay, were declared during the financial year at the time of the annual general meeting, those interim dividends can also be regularized by the members. So the resolution can also be passed to that effect. So there is one important compliance over here which is to be noted. The interim dividend has to be deposited in the separate account with the scheduled bank within 5 days from the date of declaration. Otherwise, it becomes the non-compliance. So these are some of the important points one needs to understand before proceeding further. Now we'll talk about the final dividend. I hope you have understood the final dividend. I hope you have understood the interim dividend part. Now we will proceed further and understand the final dividend. Final dividend. So some important points. When the dividend is declared at AGM of the company, is known as final dividend. The rate of at which final dividend needs to be declared and paid shall be recommended by BOD. Shall be recommended by BOD. Such rate is required to be approved by the members at AGM. Passing ordinary resolution. The rate of dividend recommended by board cannot be increase by members, cannot be increased by members. So these are some of the pointers for the final dividend, and the provisions we will see, okay, little later, the payment of dividend. So when the dividend is declared at the AGM of the company, okay, so this is the type of dividend which is declared at the annual general meeting of the company, of the members. It is known as the final dividend. So members of the company can declare the final dividend, and at the rate at which the final dividend, so when it is declared at the AGM of the company, so the rate at which the final dividend needs to be declared and paid shall be recommended by the board of directors. So it is recommended by the board of directors for that matter. Such rate is required to be approved by the members at the AGM by passing ordinary resolution. So ordinary resolution is sufficient in case of the final dividend. The rate of dividend recommended by the board cannot be increased by members. Okay, so that is the condition, that after passing the resolution, after recommending it to the board, by the board to the shareholders, the rate cannot be increased as it was recommended by the board of directors. It can be decreased, but it cannot be increased. So we have studied about interim dividend and final dividend. So you may please note down all the points before we proceed further. So interim dividend, board of directors, during the financial year we have talked about the sources of interim dividend. Within 5 days. Then the final dividend. So we have talked about the interim and the final dividend. What are the sources of the dividend? The sources are from the profits of the current financial year or profits of the previous financial year or years, can be used for the declaration of the dividend. Earlier there was a provision of transfer to the reserves in the Erstwhile Companies Act, but in 2013 there is no such provision, and the company is not mandatory for, it is not mandatory for a company to transfer a particular percentage of its profits to reserves before the declaration of any dividend in a financial year. So company may at its discretion transfer any appropriate percentage of its profits to reserves before the declaration of the dividend. So it is up to the company, if company wants to transfer some reserves. So taking the example, let's assume that there is ABC Limited which proposes to transfer more than 10% of its profits to reserve before declaration of the dividend at the rate of 12%. If that is the case, can company do so? The answer is yes. So company may at its discretion transfer to the reserves before declaration of the dividend. Now let's talk about various provisions, okay, regarding declaration of the dividends. Provisions regarding declaration and payment of dividend. Declaration and payment of dividend. So which are the provisions? Okay, one needs to understand first, okay, before at the time of declaration and payment of dividend. One by one we'll try to understand. So the first point, company needs to find out the sources for declaration of dividend. Sources for declaration of for declaration of dividend. So we have already discussed the profits of the current financial year, profits of the previous financial year can be used for the declaration of the dividend. Then transfer to reserves. Transfer to reserves. Okay. It is at the discretion of the company. It is at the discretion, you can say, of the company. It is at discretion of the company. So earlier there was requirement, but now, okay, in the 2013 Act there is no requirement. So now the question will arise whether there is a no profit with the company in the current financial year. Can company proceed further with the declaration of the dividend? So the second proviso to section 123 subsection 1 says that in event of inadequacy or absence of any profits in any financial year, a company may declare a dividend out of the accumulated profits of the previous years, which have been transferred to the free reserves. However, such declaration, okay, shall be subject to some basic conditions. The rate of dividend shall not exceed the average of the rates which at which dividend was declared by the company immediately preceding 3 years. Okay, so the average should not be exceeded. Declaration, you can say declaration of dividend when there is inadequacy or absence of profits. Okay, so it can be done from accumulated profits. Can be done from accumulated profits of previous years. The dividend shall be deposited. The amount of the dividend, you can say, amount of dividend shall be deposited in a separate bank account within 5 days of declaration. Within 5 days of declaration, the amount should be deposited in the separate bank account. Okay, after depositing the dividend, okay, what should be the next step? It should be the payment of dividend. Okay, the payment has to be made, okay, of the dividend. So when we talk about payment of dividend, there are certain conditions we should be complied with. Payment of dividend. Okay, so which are those conditions? First, dividend shall be payable to the register shareholder or to his banker. So if he has intimated to the company that okay, you may just deposit my dividend in this particular bank account. Normally the listed companies, they do like this. Okay, they deposit the dividend in the bank account directly. So if the shareholder has already informed. If there is the joint shareholder, then it can be given to the first shareholder for that matter. Dividends are payable in cash, and in kind, and not in kind, sorry, and not in kind. That has to be remembered. Dividend must be paid to entitled shareholders within 30 days from the date of declaration. Okay, so within 30 days the dividend should be paid. Okay, that is also one of the important requirement. So these are some of the important points, okay, one needs to understand before declaring the dividend. So there are some prohibitions. in case of section 8 companies. Okay, so if any company will make the default, in that case, okay, dividend may not be paid. So let's quickly go through all these provisions once again in order to understand. So sources of the for the declaration of dividend is the current sources or the previous sources. Okay, current profit of the financial year or previous financial year. Then transfer to reserves, this provision is not mandatory for the company because it is as per the discretion of the company. Company may take the decision whether to transfer the dividend in the account or not. Declaration of dividend when there is inadequacy or absence of profit, so it can be done from accumulated profits of the previous years. That also is possible in case of the dividend. The amount of dividend shall be deposited in the separate bank account with the scheduled bank, okay, within 5 days from the date of declaration of the dividend. What are the various provisions for the payment of dividend? Dividend shall be payable to the registered shareholder. So it is only payable to the registered shareholder or to his banker. If he has already informed to the company that this is my banker, then it can be paid to that particular bank account also. It should be paid in cash and not in kind. That is also very important. It must be paid to the entitled shareholder within how many days? Within 30 days from the date of declaration of the dividend. So you need to understand, within 5 days the dividend has to be deposited in the separate bank account, and then the payment has to be made from the date of declaration to 30th date. Okay, that is the important condition. If any company is making any kind of default, so section 123 subsection 6 contains prohibition on declaration of dividend. So it specifically provides that a company which fails to comply with the provisions of section 73 with regards to prohibition on acceptance of deposits from public, or section 74 repayment of deposits, such company shall not, so long as such failure continues, declare any dividend on its equity shares. Okay, so if there is any default with sections in connection with section 73 and 74, then such companies cannot declare dividend to its equity shareholders. In case of section 8 companies are basically companies which are prohibited from paying any dividend to its members. So because its profits are intended to be applied in only promoting the objects for which it is formed. So like charitable objects, you can say. So various objects are there. Okay, so that is the reason the profit motive may be there, but that profit cannot be distributed amongst the shareholder. It can only be utilized, that part of the profit can only be utilized for the purposes for which that company has been incorporated. Now this particular provision is over, 123. Okay, so 123 we have already covered. So all these particular provisions regarding declaration of dividend is given under 123. Now let's talk about unpaid dividend account. Now we'll talk about unpaid dividend account. Section 124. So section 124 of the Act contains the provisions relating to this unpaid dividend account. What is meant by unpaid dividend account? So unpaid, or you can say unclaimed dividend, okay, should be transferred to this unpaid dividend account. So the provision says that from date of declaration Then the company shall within 7 days from expiry of 30 days transfer the total amount of such unpaid dividend to unpaid dividend account. Okay, so once the dividend has been declared and it has not been paid, okay, so here if it has not been paid or claimed within a period of 30 days, that is a mandatory condition that it should be paid or claimed, but if it is not paid or claimed, then the company shall within 7 days from the expiry of 30 days transfer such dividend to the account called as unpaid dividend account. So it is a mandatory condition for the company to transfer such part of dividend to the unpaid dividend account. So after that, company will have to prepare a statement of the unpaid dividend account within 90 days of transferring the amount. The company shall prepare a statement. So you can say within 90 days of transferring any amount to unpaid dividend account the company shall prepare a statement. So it will contain the name, last known addresses, the unpaid dividend to be paid, all such statement, okay, all such details should be properly prepared. So if any default is made in transferring the total unpaid dividend amount or any part, okay, then the company, in case of default, we can say in case of default, then there will be a penalty which can be levied on the company. Okay, the company shall pay from the date of such default interest at the rate of 12%. The interest at 12% per annum, okay, will be paid. Then claimant to apply for payment of claimed amount. So any person claiming to be entitled for such particular money which has been transferred in this particular account, okay, so such person can claim that particular amount by applying it to the company concerned, okay, for the payment of money so claimed. Now this is a mandatory condition, and if it remains idle for 7 years, then that amount has to be transferred to the account called as into Investor Education and Protection Fund. Transfer of unclaimed amount to investor education and protection fund, IEPF, investor education and protection fund. Okay, so this is the mandatory condition. Okay, when it should be transferred, any money transferred to unpaid dividend account which remains unpaid. Okay, so if we can say that if money remains unpaid for 7 years, okay, if money remains unpaid for 7 years, then this particular amount has to be transferred to IEPF, investor education protection fund. It should be along with the interest accrued thereon. So company shall send a prescribed statement containing the details of such transfer to IEPF authority, and in turn authority will issue, okay, a receipt to the company as evidence for such particular transfer. At the same time, all the shares of the company, okay, should also be transferred in respect of which the dividend has not been claimed, shall be transferred by the company in the name of all shares in respect of which dividend has not been paid or claimed within 7 years shall be transferred in the name of IEPF. So whether claimant can reclaim? Yes, claimant can reclaim, okay, of some transfer shares from IEPF. So there has to be some prescribed procedure, okay, after submission all the documents. So what will be the punishment for contravention? Punishment: if the company fails to comply with any of the requirements of the unpaid, then it shall be punished. So there can be two types of punishment for company and every officer. Okay, so if it is a company, it shall be punishable with rupees 5 lakhs to rupees 25 lakhs. That would be the fine, okay, on the company. And what about the officer? It is fine again of rupees 1 lakh to rupees 5 lakhs. Okay, so if anybody, okay, contravenes the provision, then this is the procedure. So just make a note of all these points. So 123 we have seen. Then we have talked about unpaid dividend account. Unpaid dividend account. So what is the procedure? In case a dividend has not been declared within 30 days, it should be okay. It should be, then the company shall within next 7 days of the expiry of 30 days transfer in the unpaid dividend account, the separate account. Then within 90 days after transferring it any amount to the unpaid, the company shall prepare a statement. In case of default, if company makes the default, then 12% per annum interest rate will be charged. Claimant, if any, can claim that amount by after applying to the company, and if it remains unpaid for 7 consecutive years, then that particular amount has to be transferred to Investor Education Protection Fund. Now all shares in respect of which dividend has not been claimed, all shares also should be transferred in the name of Investor Education Protection Fund. And if there is a punishment for what? For contravention. For contravention. For contravention of unpaid dividend. So what is the punishment for company? It is rupees 5 lakhs to 25 lakhs, and for every officer who is in default, rupees 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. So this is the fund. Let's talk about IEPF. IEPF, that is Investor Education Protection Fund. The provisions are given under section 125 along with various rules framed from time to time. Investor Education and Protection Fund Authority Rules 2016 deal with Investor Education Protection Fund. So basically this is established. It is established by whom? It is established by CG. It is established by CG, that is central government. And amounts, in this particular fund, which particular amounts will be specified amounts and utilized for refund of unclaimed and unpaid amounts, can be credited under for these particular funds. So it is for the protection of interest of investors. So what are the important objectives? So it can be utilized. It can be utilized for, you can say, refund of unclaimed and unpaid amounts, then promotion of investors awareness, and C, protection of the interest of investors. So for these purposes, this account can be used. This fund can be used. So credits are basically made by credits of specified amounts can be made in this particular fund, like amount given by the CG, donations of the CG. So which particular credit of specified amounts. So amount given by CG donations by CG unpaid dividend account that we already studied. Or you can say income from various investments, income from various investments, some matured deposits. Okay, though these are some of the funds, okay, which can be an interest. So there are various particular things, okay, you can see over here. The utilization we have already talked about, okay, where it can be done. So basically which points you need to refer to. It is established by CG for which particular purposes it can be used. Refund of unclaimed or unpaid amounts. Promotion of investors awareness activities can be taken care of by this particular from this particular account. Then protection of the interest of the investors. क्रेडिट क्या क्या होगा इसमें अमाउंट गिवन बाय द सीजी में गिव अमाउंट डोनेशंस बाय द सीजी देन अनपेड डिविडेंड अकाउंट कैन बी यूज ओके various incomes from the sources like investments made by from this particular fund mature deposits and interest. So these all particular funds can be credited in the investor education protection account. The last topic punishment for failure to distribute declared dividend within 30 days. So if any company or officer of the company makes the default in payment of the dividend, okay, so this is given under section 127, okay, which says that time limit is 30 days and if it fails to do so, then there can be two different penalties. Like company, if it is a company, shall be liable to pay simple interest at 18% per annum, okay, during the period which एंड एवरी डायरेक्टर, ओके, डायरेक्टर को भी लायबिलिटी दिया है, एवरी डायरेक्टर ऑफ द कंपनी, ओके. फर्स्ट इज imprisonment up to 2 years plus fine of rupees 1000 for every day of default. Okay, so this is the, so if he can prove that due to the operation of law beyond his control the dividend could not be paid, okay, in such cases, okay, the exemption can be granted for that particular reason. So I hope you have understood all these particular provisions very well, okay, relating to IEPF, declaration of dividend. So today we have talked about dividend, interim dividend, final dividend, then provisions regarding declaration of payment of dividend, what will happen if the dividend is not paid, then unpaid dividend account, then the IEPF, and last the punishment for failure to distribute declared dividend within 30 days. I hope you understood all these provisions. Please do watch this video. We will come up with a new topic in the next session. Thank you so much for watching this video. Till then, goodbye.